So while long-term development financing, particularly towards those crucial sustainable development goals, remains the basis for building better resilience in the long term, it's the short-term stimulus injections to economies that are providing critical buffers amidst broader economic decline. In the United States, negotiations around a fifth stimulus package between the White House and Congress has moved slowly as the two sides grapple with how big to go with an election that is adding additional impetus to get a deal done. Well, for more, we speak to our correspondent. You heard there, Sherwin. He's live for us via Skype. Great to have you with us as always, Sherwin. And this is so important for us. So we've just been talking about our own recovery package now after the previous stimulus. The United States has already injected some $6 trillion into the economy as part of its relief response, but much more needed there as well. And these negotiations seemingly have been an uphill battle. Just explain where we are right now in this process.
Complicated in a word. You know, Francis, we heard President Ramaphosa speak earlier today about the 500 billion rand stimulus, which is the largest in Africa that has been pumped into the South African economy. Compare that to the 99 trillion rand that has already come in for previous stimulus packages in the United States, as they now negotiate an additional $2.2 trillion, which is known as the HEROES Act, which the House of Representatives, controlled by Democrats, passed on the 2nd of October, that has now led to negotiations with Senate Republicans and the White House. Remember, we have divided government in the United States, so it's very difficult for the two main parties in Congress to reach consensus on what is really a much-needed stimulus in the United States, despite the amounts that we've seen to date. And that really just speaks to the longevity of the coronavirus and the need that the hardest-hit states, places like New York and California, Washington State, that in the early months of the coronavirus in the United States were really disproportionately affected, and a lot of these states, of course, didn't budget for the outlay that they experienced as a result of this virus. So things in the HEROES Act that Democrats are seeking here: support for small businesses, money to bolster education and childcare to the tune of $270 billion. $436 billion for states and local governments, as I just explained, having to outlay funds that were not budgeted for, to restore unemployment benefits to the tune of $600 per week per individual. These are benefits that expired on the 31st of July. That was based on a previous stimulus package. They're trying to restore that, Francis. Individuals that earn under $75,000 a year will get a check of $1,200, a once-off payment of $1,200. But as we've explained, very complicated. Let's listen to how Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Speaker of the House, characterized these negotiations.
There's a lot of work, a lot of staff work that goes into clarifying, so we have an understanding what the language means, making concessions here or there, or clarifications, or prioritizing in a different way. It's called legislating. It's called legislating. It's a foreign language to the White House in many respects, but it is what we have to do to save lives, and that's what we intend to do. And I was optimistic, because why would you engage in all these conversations unless you were optimistic that something could come of it? And we did move in some areas. But everything is nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to. That's the way it always is.
So I said complicated at the beginning of this. Let me tell you why. Last week, President Trump, Francis, tweeting that he didn't want to continue with negotiations until after the election. He's now walked that back, and he tweeted yesterday, go big in terms of the stimulus or go home. And that now places additional pressure on the Senate Republican caucus that has been very reluctant to pass this $2.2 trillion measure. So we'll see how it plays out. I know that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin's up there on the Capitol Hill in Washington today. He said earlier the president was committed to getting a stimulus deal done, and that while it will be hard to do so before the election, they will keep on trying.
There's the real economy and this real spending if and when it happens. And then there's a stock market, sometimes on its own track, but we understand it has factored in a stimulus bill and has been very reactive to these negotiations on Capitol Hill.
Well, we know that President Trump, Francis, likes to use the stock market as a barometer and a reference point to how well the United States is doing. And what we've seen over the last 2 days is the Dow Jones has closed down because of these stymied negotiations. They were expected a deal to be done and dusted by now. The Dow Jones is in the red as I'm speaking to you now. Let's listen to how this was characterized by Ross Gerber. Gerber is the CEO of Gerber Kawasaki Wealth Management, explaining how the market has factored the stimulus package in and some of the considerations at play.
The market's now anticipating, a Biden landslide, and with that, a huge stimulus bill, and that's why the markets are up, because that's kind of what we need to do. And it's, if we do one more solid stimulus bill, as much as I hate it, the debt and the deficits, it's what we need to keep people, going right now and get through ultimately solving coronavirus. So that's the optimism. I think the second part is having stable leadership. I think Trump's display at the debates really proves that, honestly, I don't even think he's all there right now because of all the medications he's on and everything. And we need stable leadership in this country. And I think people have realized how important that is.
Well, they're speaking at a point yesterday when the market was actually up for a moment. But of course, then the news came that negotiations weren't moving fast enough. And as I explained earlier, the market's in the red at the moment, Francis.
All right, and then throwing forward to tonight, Sherwin, so we've been talking about this in the past, no second presidential debate, but 2 town halls on 2 separate channels with the different nominees. What's different is that President Trump and Biden will take questions now directly from voters. So how does that change what you're expecting from these events tonight?
Well, cast your mind back, Francis, to that first debate a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland, Ohio, where no one could really get a word in. The difference here tonight, it won't be a formal presidential debate. You'll have both candidates on different networks at the same time. Biden will be on ABC News for a 90-minute town hall. Donald Trump will be on NBC News for a 1-hour town hall starting at 8 p.m. local time here. And the difference here is that I don't think you're going to see the bellicosity that we saw in that first debate. Why? Because you are answering questions directly from voters. And we are at a very extraordinary political moment in the United States where there's a great deal of pain, grief, and suffering given the 215,000 Americans that have died, the economic impacts that the coronavirus has wrought on Americans. So this is a very delicate moment, 19 days ahead of an election. So what do you have? You have a president, an incumbent that has been lagging in the polls. The new Wall Street Journal NBC poll coming out today affirming what we've been telling you about the double-digit lead that Joe Biden continues to enjoy nationally and the leads that he enjoys in battleground states. So this will be an opportunity for President Trump to reframe the debate. Will he be able to exhibit some empathy? Will he be able to have a conversation with voters? This is someone that tends to kind of talk about the stock market, to talk about himself. Will he be able to connect with voters? Because this will be a telling live performance, if you will, where he has to interact with voters. The same goes for Joe Biden. Will he, have any gaffes? Will he make any missteps? He is in the lead now, so you don't want to make too many mistakes. But what we do know about Joe Biden, given his history and his personal losses that he's experienced in his life, is that he's able to empathize with people. So this is a very important moment for both of them. No missteps, and we'll see what the polls say in a couple of days.
And the polls are so interesting. I remember Trump was meant to be the runner-up last time. We look forward to chatting to you in coming very busy days for you. Thank you very much, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, live for us from the United States.